So I don't know how many of you are having issues finding a gas pump that does not say empty. Well, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, and there's very, very deep concern that there's going to be no gas. So this morning I went to Kroger and there was a fairly long line. And even though I had about 3/4 of a tank of gas, I thought, let me make sure that I fill up, okay? Because everybody's doing it, I need to do it too. So I'm waiting at the gas pump and I'm very patiently waiting, not a huge long wait. And I pull into the empty gas pump. And at that very moment, there's a guy who thinks that it's his spot. And he sees me pulling in, and we're about equidistant from the gas pump. I'm a little closer, but for whatever reason, he thought it was his, right? That happens. Two people coming in from different sides, you both think it's your right. So I pull in, he jumps out of his car very angrily and says to me, and I just looked at him and I said, go ahead, no problem. And I gently pulled out and smiled at him and let him pull in. Well, it took all of 10 minutes, maybe not even that much, and he filled up and he looked at me and smiled and said, thank you. So I just want to unpack that moment of both vying for the same place. My initial reaction of him jumping out of the car and saying it was his place. And the initial reaction is that of, it's mine and I have as much right to it as you did, and we go into fight. But because I teach this for a living day in and day out, I did what I tell every single person who comes through my training to do, which is to slow down. As my friend Paula Kalajeri says in Cultural Agility, she says, slow down your limbic system, which is in fact your mammalian part of your brain system. So I slowed it down and I looked at him with absolute compassion. He was ready for war. And it all turned out to be a very friendly interaction. But what was so fascinating about the whole thing was he was ready to fight. And his surprise when I looked at him and I backed out and I said, go ahead, please. So an extra 10 minutes. But my point in this moment, and for all of us, the limbic system is known as the paleo-mammalian cortex. It's the part of the brain that takes over when you go into fight, flight, or freeze. And by slowing it down and just thinking, how do I want to respond in this moment? And just going back to how many times in our lives do we have an opportunity to slow ourselves down and choose how to react? Now, it also happened that I was particularly relaxed and I wasn't in a terrible hurry. But that moment of diffusing someone else's anger, that moment of saying, we were both equally right. If we were in a court of law and they said, who was right here? Both of us were equidistant. There was nobody there to coordinate who was coming in. But my point to all of us, and my point to myself this morning, was just the power of being able to diffuse the situation. The power of being able to go, you're not more right than me, but I am choosing in this moment to behave in a way that is more evolved. And that absolute look of shock on his face when he was ready to get combative and have a fight, and all I did was just say, no, you go ahead. And that absolute appreciation afterwards, which was, thank you so much. So I think about this in the context of all of our lives. Is a huge part of what I do, whether I'm giving keynotes or doing individual coaching or workshops, is how do we deal with conflict? And knowing that we don't have control over other people, but we have control over ourselves and our reactions is the greatest power we have. Now, it's all very well knowing that when things are going well, but in moments when we go into a state of fight, flight, or freeze, when we feel attacked, we don't always have that control. So it's that reminder that what makes us evolved, what takes our communication mastery to another level, is the ability to slow down in those moments and really think intentionally about how we want to be and how we want to respond. So I wanted to come on and share the moment with you because the amount of times I've been in a supermarket and had somebody feel that they were in front and simply go ahead, and see the change of demeanor because it's unexpected that somebody is not combative. And right now, it's going to be very interesting, the fights that are going to take place over fuel pumps, because I could just see the chaos that was about to begin without a coordinated effort and people vying for space and that sense of panic. And I think it's incumbent upon each and every one of us to say, how do we want to show up and what is the role we want to play? And a good way of starting our day today is to come up with 5 adjectives, 5 descriptors that you would like to have come to mind when people think about you. What are the first 5 things you would like to have to come to mind when people think about you? And then the question is, what experience are you providing to be seen in that way? So please join me on May the 24th. I will be doing another Communication Power Hour. Go onto my website, nadiaspeaks.com. It's an opportunity not only to network with other people who you may never otherwise meet, but also a chance to look consciously at taking ourselves off autopilot and really deliberately and consciously communicating by slowing down our, and if you can say this fast, then I really am impressed, our paleo-mammalian cortex, the part of our brain that wants to respond, often with fight, sometimes with flight and freeze, and slowing it down so that we do behave intentionally. So please go into my website, nadiaspeaks.com, and register for my next Communication Power Hour, and wishing you a deliberately conscious day of communication and just how powerful we can be when we diffuse rather than exacerbate situations that could lead to conflict.